There's a 15,000 square foot mansion in one of the ritziest suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia that was once owned by the music legend Kenny Rogers. But ever since Rogers sold the home way back in 2006 for $8.5 million, it has been in the hands of a sketchy Nigerian couple who ended up being unable to afford to keep up with the payments, so they turned the estate into a crazy party house, totally terrorizing the neighbors. Eventually, that couple filed for bankruptcy and fled the country, which has left Kenny Rogers' old home abandoned and just rotting away. One of you guys actually turned me onto this story, so thanks for that. The reason this home has been getting a lot of attention lately is because another YouTuber who goes by BigBankz posted a tour of the house showcasing just how bad it has gotten over recent years. The BigBankz video is awesome. If you guys haven't seen that one, I highly recommend you go and check it out, but today I'm going to put my spin on this crazy story. This property is located at 4499 Garmin Road in Atlanta, Georgia, in a neighborhood called Buckhead. It was built back in 1990. It's got 15,409 square feet with 6 bedrooms and 8 bathrooms, and the home is sitting on a big 5-acre lot, so it is super private in every direction. Kenny Rogers made a fortune on this house, by the way. He bought it back in 2002 for $2.75 million, which was a massive discount compared to the $12 million that the sellers were originally asking. Then he went on to sell the house for $8.5 million after just a few years of owning it, walking away with around a $5 million profit. The people who bought this property off of Kenny Rogers were named Yinka Adesokan and Paula Nelson. These two owned a company called Family Dermatology based out of Lilburn, Georgia, and they lived in the house a good while until they ran into some legal trouble in 2016. I'm not going to bore you guys with the legal details, but Family Dermatology was breaking a couple of laws and got into a mess with the U.S. Department of Justice, and ultimately they ended up filing for bankruptcy in September of 2016, which, according to the bankruptcy filing, they had almost $20 million worth of debt and claims at the time. When you file for bankruptcy, you don't necessarily need to give up your home. There's actually a lot of factors that dictate what happens with that, but according to reports, this couple doesn't live in the Kenny Rogers house anymore, and they actually have fled the country, which raises a lot of questions about who has been in control of the house since 2016. From 2016 to 2022, you would think that this home would just have been sitting there collecting dust, but it actually somehow turned into this huge party house. It's not 100% clear on how this happened, but reports say that the home was in the hands of a family relative when Yinka and Paula moved out of the country. I wasn't able to dig up any photos of what this house looked like while Kenny was living there, but since this place ended up being such a big party house, I was able to dig up some great photos of what the house looked like before it got abandoned and destroyed, so let's check those out next. Okay, so these pictures are up on a website called weddingwire.com. It's basically a site that just offers different properties available for rent to be used as a wedding venue. Real quick, before we jump into the photos, just check out down here. So they say the house has a swimming pool, a sauna, a fitness studio, and a smoking lounge. Then down here, they advertise it to have dressing rooms, a dance floor, barware. And then if you wanted to rent this place out, it would be starting at $5,000 for the peak season and starting at just $3,500 for the off season. Honestly, that's not bad pricing at all for a wedding venue like this. Let's check out the house. Okay, so first up here, we've got an aerial view. We've got the backyard here at the front of the shot with the swimming pool. There's the house in the middle. There is another pool in the front of the house, and then that long winding driveway that leads out to the street. This is the view that you get of the house whenever you pull into the gates. You've got the house right there in front of you, but the big pool of water in between you and the house, and then you have to kind of drive around that pool. Here they're showing us one of the suites on the first floor, and basically every bedroom in this house is like a huge master bedroom with an attached living room, so you can see the living room here in the front with a bed there in the back. Here's a different suite also on the first floor from a different perspective. You've got the bed now here in the front, and then that living room off the bedroom in the back. Each bedroom obviously has its own bathroom. They look like this. The finishes to me are a little bit dated, but obviously the bathroom is huge. This section here is called the entry foyer, so it's kind of just like a seating area right behind the front door that also has direct access to the backyard. Obviously the dining room is pretty grand. I'm surprised though that the table only seats 8, considering this is like a 16,000 square foot house. The kitchen is actually a little bit more modern than the rest of the house. It's got this high gloss white on the cabinets, this high gloss porcelain tile on the floor, and then it looks like a little kind of breakfast nook to sit in there off the kitchen island. Here's a shot of one of the living rooms. All of that detail on the ceiling is probably the most impressive part of this room. That is not easy to pull off. Speaking of ceiling detail, I had to show you guys the library living room, as they call it. Check out that ceiling, guys. Isn't that awesome? Here's the gym with mirrors everywhere. It's kind of normal to have mirrors on the walls in your gym, but all over the ceiling too. Kind of weird. Last shot we'll look at together, guys, is just of this master suite. So you have this just like crazy bed sitting up on a pedestal in the middle of the room with all of that ceiling detail above the bed. Not something you see every day. This property goes on forever, guys. I think we just looked at like 10 of 85 photos, but you get the point. It's a huge place. It's definitely fit for entertaining. I'm not surprised that Kenny Rogers once owned it, and I'm also not all that surprised that it ended up turning into a party house either. Now, these big bashes that were happening are pretty well documented online. Local news outlets were just as outraged as the neighbors about all of the traffic running through this residential area. I even dug up this old party flyer from one of the parties. Kind of hilarious though, because that's definitely the house up there in the background, but they totally photoshopped this pool into the shot. I guess the real pool just wasn't good enough for the flyer. Anyways, as people continue to throw illegal parties here, everything from music videos hosted by famous rappers to weddings like we just saw, the house continued to get more and more run down. The neighbors got more and more pissed, and at some point, things just kind of went quiet at Kenny Rogers' old mansion. There is one report of somebody named Tasha who claimed that she has taken ownership of the house, and she is the reason that the parties over there have stopped. Anyways, back to the BigBankz YouTuber that we were talking about earlier. He does a 45-minute walkthrough of this mansion on his YouTube channel. His entire channel actually is dedicated to just exploring old rundown places like this. And the picture that his video paints is super sad, even a bit eerie. I'll let you guys check out his video for the full context here, but like you can see in these couple of clips, it's just kind of dark and dusty and slowly falling apart. Real estate is kind of weird in that if humans aren't actively living in and using the space, they tend to just kind of fall apart and get taken over by Mother Nature. And it feels like that effect is just exaggerated even more when you're dealing with a 15,000 square foot mega mansion like we looked at today. If you're wondering what Kenny Rogers would think of all this, he passed away back in 2020, but something tells me he wouldn't have cared all that much about the state of his old home. Kenny was actually pretty famously a real estate investor, or real estate gambler as some would call it. He owned a lot of luxury properties in his lifetime, and he was known to generally make good money when he sold, and who cares what happens to the place after you sell it, right? If you enjoyed the episode today, guys, hit the thumbs up button down below before you go. I'll see you next time.